Welcome to Conscious Millionaire, show number 402. Today, we've got a great show for you, but first off, I want to tell you, today you can get my book absolutely free. Conscious Millionaire was the number one book on all of Amazon, over 50,000 downloads, but instead of $27.95, right now, today, you can get it free at consciousmillionaire.com/free book. That's consciousmillionaire.com/free book. And today, you're going to stick around because we've got a great show with Tom Henschel on how to be perceived the way you want to be perceived. Here's a clip from Tom.
My work goes beyond just the workplace and helps people be better people, raise their consciousness. Literally, I think that's how I help my clients, and I do think that ripples out to society as a whole.
This is Conscious Millionaire, the podcast for you, the conscious entrepreneur who wants to make a positive impact by building a profitable business. Every Monday through Friday with your host, business coach, marketing expert, and best-selling author, J.V. Crum III. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at J.V. Crum to receive free training and gifts from our guests.
Hello, this is your coach, J.V. Crum III, and welcome to you from wherever you're listening around the globe. And now a big thank you to our listeners and friends in San Fernando, Los Angeles, and the country of Dubai. And a reminder to check out the Conscious Millionaire Health Reality Show. This is the health and fitness podcast for busy entrepreneurs like you. To listen, just go to consciousmillionairehealth.com. Now, do you want to break through your 6- and 7-figure barriers, grow a high-profit business that creates a positive change? Then the next 30 minutes is going to provide you with actionable coaching that can change your business and life. Now, I've got a great show for you today because our featured guest is an expert in leadership development, and we'll be discussing how you can be perceived the way you want to be perceived. He is a former actor in TV and theater and is now an executive coach that runs the executive development firm Essential Communications. Over the past 20 plus years, he's helped hundreds of senior leaders and entrepreneurs achieve the look and sound of leadership, which is also the title of his popular podcast. My guest today is Tom Henschel. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JV. What a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, that's my formal introduction, but how would you describe yourself in your own words, Tom?
I think two things that have helped me get to where I am today, both as a coach and that helped me as an actor. One is that I'm a people person, and I don't mean that I'm the life of the party so much as people to me are like data are for some people, that people give me a lot of information and I can read them. And the other thing that's been true for me since I was little is I love to learn. I'm aware that I have an inner life and I feed it and I'm curious about it, and then I like teaching to others. So the people part and the teacher-learner part are the two things that I like to talk about.
And in my book, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference, I talk about the triple win, you, others, and society winning together. The old school approach to business, and it's still around, is it's just about me and how much money I can get people to pay me. But the paradox is that's not the person who becomes the richest. The person who creates the most wealth is actually someone who's intimately concerned about their clients and wants to create a greater good for society. It's the whole new conscious paradigm. How does your business create a positive impact for your clients, and what's the greater good it creates for society?
Well, first of all, I just want to say one of the reasons I'm so pleased to talk to you is because I believe what you believe. I love listening to you talk about consciousness. I love the fact that that's part of your brand and what you're bringing to people. And I'm with you. One of the moments that happens to me over and over in my coaching that has become really meaningful to me is as we get towards the end of the coaching and somebody's suddenly having separation anxiety, they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do without you? Someone will say to me, you know, the coaching has been really helpful. My boss is really pleased. My team is really happy. But you know who really is grateful for the coaching? My husband. And that sense that my work goes beyond just the workplace and helps people be better people, raise their consciousness. Literally, I think that's how I help my clients. And I do think that ripples out to society as a whole.
Well, I agree with you. When we're transforming and uplifting our clients, and that's our real intention, that's how we're making our money, is that we first and foremost really want to help our clients go to a new place. Mm-hmm. As they go to a new place, they transform and become a new person. Mm-hmm. And if that's from our products, from our coaching, from the services we provide, our trainings, whatever it comes from, as they transform, then how they show up in their world and how they interact with others, and then the ideas that they have for transforming other people and the work that they want to do in the world, all of it ripples out. And that's the great thing about this whole conscious movement. Now, you work on the look and sound of leadership and helping people become perceived in the way they want to be perceived. So what's the first step if someone's doing that work and they've never really sat down and said, okay, how do I want to be perceived in the world? And then how do I create that perception so that who I am is what people see in a way that I want them to see it?
I think it builds so nicely off the last thing you talked about. I think if we're focused on ourselves, it's harder to be successful. When we focus on others, it's easier. I was taught a lesson a long time ago when I was still acting. I was at a stage in my career where I was making a living. I wasn't parking cars. I wasn't waiting tables. And I worked with a group of other actors. We all had passed that threshold. We all were just successful actors. And what we talked about a lot was our batting average, meaning how many auditions did you go on before you got a job? And a really good batting average was like 4 auditions for every 1 job. And I was at about 6 to 1. And I was talking about it one day with this group, and this wonderful actress, a woman named Linda Carlson, said to me, she said, well, how do you judge if an audition is a success? And I looked at her like she was nuts. I was like, if I get the job.
Right.
And she reached across, she put her hand on my forearm and she said, but you can't control that. That's not anything you can do. Be present. And JV, it changed me. That sense of like, it's not about the end result. It's not about getting the work. It's not about getting the client to sign the paper. It's not about, am I going to get this job? And oh my God, I need this job. It's about doing the thing I can control, which is about being present in the room. And I remember my very next audition, which was completely different because I went in the room to be present as opposed to get the job. So I think that's one thing that people can do is, stop worrying about the outcome. Am I going to get it? And how am I showing up?
So if you want to be perceived in a specific way, and I completely agree that being present is the first step to really being authentic. And I'm wondering if that's a piece of how to be perceived the way you want to be perceived.
I think it is because it puts something in your control. Here's the second piece. This came out of my acting work, but I did it with a president of a division here at one of the movie studios. This was a woman who had this high visibility job. She was under 40 and already a president. She had a big international presence, and she was going to a press conference overseas. And she was nervous and she wanted my help. And so we rehearsed, we wrote the piece, and she had a very big office, and I asked her to go to the end of her office. I was on the couch, do your thing. And she was very kind of timid and hesitant and as she was rehearsing. And I said, hold on, look, if the press wrote about you, what would you want them to say? What adjectives would you want them to use? And she said, knowledgeable, expert, presidential. And those just came flying out of her mouth. And I went, well, then be knowledgeable and presidential and expert. Put those 3 words in your head. And she did. This woman there was a reason why she was a shooting star, right? Because she could. I do this exercise with a lot of people of like, well, around being perceived the way you want to be perceived is, what words do you want people to use about you? And put those consciously in your head and use them like a mantra over time.
So it's really about creating anchors that you're going to create states that relate to those anchors.
Yes, and behaviors that relate to those anchors. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So then if you're listening to this, one of the first steps is for you to create, let's say, 3 adjectives that and I love 3s. I work in 3s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because 3s we can deal with. In my whole system for how to be more productive in a day, there are only 3 priorities that you can have in any given day, but you'll get, sometimes 4 or 5 times more done that way. So if you think of 3 adjectives that like, this is how I want to be perceived, then once you have those 3 adjectives, how do you build on that so that you then create that perception?
One of the things I tell people is don't assume you know what's going to happen. Like, well, if I'm going to be, expert, then I'm going to talk fast. And it's like, no, don't prejudge it. I do think it's like a kind of meditation where you put it in and you think about it as often as you can. So the challenge that I have for people is if you can think about it twice a day, tomorrow try and think about it 4 times a day. And then the next day, try to think about it 8 times a day. So as often as you can, without pre-planning what it's going to be, what I find is that people start to shift. Like literally, it's like if I were going to answer the phone like an expert, I don't know what that would be, but let me think about that as I hit connect expert. And something different will happen, and be open to that possibility.
Okay, so there's going to be a natural shift that occurs. Then
Yes.
how can you monitor that shift? Like how, because inside you might be perceiving that shift differently than someone outside might be perceiving it.
Oh, yes, JB, that's so great. I agree. With my clients, in the workplace, I'm getting feedback for them. So I get feedback in the beginning and I get feedback at the end and find out, like, is it making a difference? I think for us in the entrepreneurial world, I think it's really important to have some feedback loop and also some sense of self-monitoring. I really do think that if you have some sense that things are going different, at a certain point they will. But I agree with you, JB. That's such a great question is, who are your trusted advisors who are also giving you feedback where you can say, for example, look, I'm working on these 3 adjectives. Are you seeing them? Or to say to people, what 3 adjectives come to mind when you think of me? So yes, you need a monitor from the outside as well. Great point.
Now, you're an actor, and you're used to being on TV. So do you ever use video or audio so you're going to record yourself and then look back at that and critique that? Is that part of what you do?
Absolutely. Certainly when I'm rehearsing new keynotes, I absolutely record them because I don't want to have to try and remember what I said. So in my rehearsals, I'm not trying to repeat what I did yesterday. I absolutely use audio.
So you're listening to this. So here's some steps that you can do based upon what Tom said. You can come up with 3 adjectives and then start thinking of those adjectives twice a day, then the next day 4 times a day. Then go to people that you trust and ask them, am I showing up like this? Or tell me the 3 adjectives that would describe how you think I'm showing up. You can also record yourself in video, audio. We all have that on our smartphones today, no matter, what camp you're in, whether you're in the iPhone camp or the Android camp, because most people are, and then there's the Windows camp, there's only a few camps, but we all have the same tools basically.
Absolutely.
And so you can really monitor yourself. And this way you're on track to creating not only how you want to show up, but also making certain that how you want to show up is how you're perceived. Tom, this is great information. Up next, we've got the gift giving and the conscious questions. Now, I want to take a moment to invite you to learn more about our new 6-figure breakthrough masterminds. And right now, we have special alpha discounts. However, they're not for everyone because this is only for business owners who have at least $2,000 to $5,000 revenue a month and want to break through your first $100,000 in revenue. They're by application, and there are only a few spaces with this discount. So to speak directly with me about your business and your profit opportunities, make your reservation by going to consciousmillionaire.com/mastermind. Again, that's consciousmillionaire.com/mastermind to reserve your time today. Welcome back. I'm here with our guest, Tom Henschel, who is an expert in leadership development and training you on how to be perceived the way that you want to be perceived. But before we go to today's business building gift and the conscious questions, I want to congratulate you for listening today and for showing up for yourself, because our podcast, coaching, masterminds, business academy are all designed to help you break through your 6- and 7-figure barriers so that you can get your message out to the world. You can make your positive impact with the people you're here to help on this planet. And by making your difference, you can create the prosperity, the financial freedom, and the lifestyle that you desire. So congratulations to you for showing up again for the Conscious Millionaire podcast. Tom, it's time for the gift giving. What is the gift that you have for all of our listeners today?
I put together a zip file that has 10 PDFs in it that are topics that I talk about with entrepreneurs. I mentor a lot of other entrepreneurs, and these are things I find that I talk about over and over. Some of the PDFs are just a one-page kind of chart with a bunch of ideas on it. Some are actually like a story to read, so they can have the whole zip file and all 10 PDFs.
And so that's the tools for entrepreneurs. And you can get that right now by going to consciousmillionairepodcast.com. Click on the big gold graphic that says free podcast gifts, and you can go in and get your tools for entrepreneurs. And now, Tom, it's time for the conscious questions. Could you tell us one big failure that you've had, what you learned from it, and how that failure actually led to greater success?
So when I was still a fairly new coach, I was asked to coach 3 executives in a privately held firm, and the firm was owned by a guy named Barry. Barry had made millions and millions of dollars in show business, and now he was running this company. And the deal with Barry was that he was a narcissist. He was difficult and mercurial, and I mean, he was charismatic, but he was difficult. And he didn't want coaching for himself. He wanted coaching for the 3 guys who reported to him.
He wanted to fix everybody else.
Exactly, right. So I'm in working with these 3 guys, and of course, I'm hearing tons of horror stories about Barry. And at one point, Barry calls me in. Clearly, I'm kind of granted an audience. And he, at one point, as we're talking, he's leaning back in his chair with his leg crossed, and he says, so if you're going to coach me, what would you tell me? And I flinched, JV. I said nothing of any value.
So and nothing authentic, nothing real.
Right. I completely flinched. And so there were 2 things about that I learned. One is it was really apparent to me that his opinion of me actually went down. He actually wanted to be challenged. Now, I don't know that it would have made any difference, but my point is he wanted to actually engage me in a game, and I flinched. And the second was, I worked at that time with a group of coaches, and one of them used to say, look, our job is to say the tough things in the room that nobody else will say. And I knew that I had failed at that. And so I mean, that was the beginning of a really rigorous journey for me about speaking my truth and speaking up in a way that was compassionate but authentic.
Well, and that's very strongly related to making decisions early on that there are only certain kinds of people you're going to work with, that you only want to attract this specific niche of people. And then you have to let go of the fear that you're going to lose out all these other clients. Well, by speaking your truth to the group that you're really here to speak your truth to, you actually find magically that that's how you become successful. That's how everybody becomes successsul. And I understand what you're saying because I'm a coach and I tell people the truth, and that's what they've paid me to tell them.
Right. Agreed.
Right. But you have to have that conversation up front, folks. If you're a coach, it's really important to have that conversation, ideally before they actually pay you, that you have an agreement that you're going to hold them accountable, that you're going to call them on their spades, and that you're going to speak the truth because that's what they're hiring you to do. And if they want to discard it, that's their choice. But that you're being hired to tell them the truth in a encouraging way to help them become their best.
I also find that it's a practice in our lives day to day. I mean, The truth is I have feedback for everybody. I don't give it to everybody because that's not
everybody wants it.
But I'm aware of what I know. And if someone were to ask me, I am aware of how I could say it. Whereas I was unprepared for Barry and couldn't speak my truth. And so it became a learned discipline for me.
Well, and if you're listening and wondering, okay, how does this even relate to other parts of my life? Well, I can tell you that at this stage in my life, the only people with whom I am really close friends are ones that we can speak our truth to one another. Because otherwise, I don't want to spend the time.
Right. Yes. Right? It changes how you live in the world.
It changes how you show up, and it changes how you actually demand that other people show up if they're going to be in your life. Mm-hmm. So you now have new higher level criteria. What are 3 golden nuggets you've learned as an entrepreneur that you could share that would help other entrepreneurs become more successful?
The first one is committing to self-development. I think it's the human nature. We've all got blind spots. And as entrepreneurs, our blind spots show up in our business. And so I think it behooves us to make our blind spots as small as they can be. So that's only through self-development. And I mean, look at your story, JD, all the different things that you did to get where you are today and all the different paths you had that were all connected to self-development, right? Esalen and being a monk and all those things that you talk about so generously. I think that's one thing we have to do, whether it's journaling, whether it's therapy, whether it's automatic writing, whether it's meditation, whatever it is, be on some discipline of self-development. That's the first one. The second one is, I think being an entrepreneur means playing a long game. And a lot of times, especially with younger entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are in financial trouble, They just push too hard and they forget that it's about planting seeds. They do what I call, they'll say, can we go to coffee? Can we get married? They just jump all the mental steps and want to get to the end. And I think being an entrepreneur does mean playing a long game. And then the last one is about being generous. You're a great example of that. Look at all the things on your website that are available for free and all the things on my website. And it's a world of plenty and generosity. So live in abundance, not scarcity.
None of us can build our businesses without having a steady supply of the right leads. And there are two ways to look at the right leads. One of them is the traditional marketing way. It's somebody with a problem or an aspiration. They want a solution right now. They're ready for the solution. They have the money to pay for the solution, and it happens to be the kind of solution that you provide. But there's another piece that we talk about at Conscious Millionaire, that we all have a higher purpose for being here. And that when we build a business that really has a bigger purpose than just money, all of a sudden that connects us with a part of ourselves that we realize we're going to do our best work with a certain kind of person. And that's the kind of person that we're really here to work with. So we want to be sure we attract those people and actually repel the people that we don't want to work with. Like, I will not work with people who will not take the commitments they make each week in the coaching, and they're actually going to do them. If they're not going to do them, I won't work with you. I don't care how much you paid me. Nobody's benefiting from this relationship. Right? So you've got to be committed to moving forward if we're going to work together. So how do you get a steady stream of the right leads coming in?
Before I answer that, JV, can I just comment on what you said? Because I find it very meaningful, that idea of connecting to a higher purpose, which is, it also, I think, releases us so that we can talk about our work and not feel like we're talking about ourselves and bragging. We actually have purpose.
We have a cause, right?
Yeah. And so it allows us to talk on a bigger scale that's not just me, 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 me. So I so love what you talk about when you talk about that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Regarding the right leads, I have two things, and I hope they don't sound contradictory, but number one is, I have a plan. And one way that I try to attract the right leads is by sticking with my plan. And that means in good times when the pipeline is so full, I can't get to everybody. And in times when the pipeline appears to be empty, I don't just throw my plan away because my hair's on fire. I stick with my plan. I'm really intentional about that. And the second piece, which again, I hope it doesn't sound contradictory, is I'm really flexible. I'm always learning new things. I mean, this year I started to work with a new affiliate group of coaches, and I got a new tool. It was just like, wow, this is new. I've never thought of this. I've been doing this for 25 years. What a great tool. So I'm always learning and adapting, and that also helps me bring in the right leads.
What is a brand that you love, and why do you love the brand, Tom?
Well, I got to ask, I've listened to a lot of your shows, not all of them, but a lot of them, and I've never heard anyone talk about Apple. Do people talk about Apple?
It's the number one mentioned brand.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, I haven't heard it yet. But listen, here's my story about Apple. Number one is I've only owned Apple computers since the 1980s. And I have a long relationship with Apple. And it is not a perfect relationship. But like any relationship, I feel like I work at it and they do too. Whether it's at the Genius Store, they really live out their values in a way that is really meaningful. I've worked with all kinds of people at different places in Apple. I find it just to be a really profoundly integrated company. It's rich.
Yeah, it is a great thing. And the reason you might not have heard is that we have such a lag sometimes between recording. We're frequently 6 months out in terms of being booked. And so that's a relatively new question. So you probably haven't heard the answer to it very many times on the air, even though I've been doing it for a while. So that's probably where you never heard of Apple. And it's always interesting since you brought that up, because I'm the one person who has all the backstory going on. And so I know that Apple's just happens to be the number one shout out because I've listened to it so many times. Wow, it's kind of like Think and Grow Rich is the number one mentioned book. It's obviously not mentioned on every show, but it's been mentioned the most times. Probably a third of the shows have someone said something about Think and Grow Rich.
Interesting.
Yeah. So folks, if you don't have an Apple computer, I'm just saying. Now I got to disclaim I do own Apple stock because, since I own all the Apple things, I figure I might as well own their stock as well.
Right.
But Think and Grow Rich, as long as I'm doing a pitch here, if you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, this week would be a good time to pick it up. because most successful people I know, it's one of the books we've all read.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yep.
actually brings me to my next question. What is a business book or personal growth book that you'd like to recommend?
The one that I wanted to talk about is Leadership and Self-Deception. It goes back to that idea of blind spots, and our blind spots show up in spite of us. It's the author of title is the Arbinger Institute, and that group of men and women have written more books. But this book, Leadership and Self-Deception, I find profound, challenging, friendly, very meaningful, and really helpful tools for creating change in your life.
And so how is it that you set up your day for success? Because we both know you've got a plan, and beyond planning, the most important part after you've planned is you've got to execute. You've got to take action. How do you set up your day for success?
Two things. I have a bike ride that I do in the morning in the streets of Los Angeles that I've been doing for probably close to 30 years.
Wow.
And it's just my thing, and I love it, and it clears my head, and it's my treat. I miss it when I don't do it. That's number one. And number two, I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I used to tell my clients to do this all the time, and I wasn't doing it. And finally, I began to, and it made such a difference for me, which is...
So you had good advice, right?
I did have very good advice. I now have found out that it really was good advice. It is begin and end every day with planning. Really simple. And especially as an entrepreneur, lots of balls juggle, fires show up unexpectedly. I often found that something would drop off my radar and I would lose it. And then somebody would email me and go, hey, whatever happened with the whatever? And I was like, oh my gosh. So begin and end every day with planning has made my life simpler, much more manageable, much more effective. I think I show up in a different way. It's better.
What does conscious mean to you, Tom?
For me, it's a commitment to self-development. And I've been doing it since I was in my early 20s. I think even before that, this idea that I know that there's more that I don't know, trying to make my blind spots smaller, trying to grow my own self-awareness, my self-management, that's what consciousness means to me.
And what's the legacy you want to leave?
I think of this two ways. With my clients, I want to leave the legacy of he really had my best interest at heart. He really helped me. And with my daughters, I want them to feel my dad really saw me.
I'd like to give a shout out to consciousworld.org. A portion of every sale of my book, Conscious Millionaire, is donated to the Conscious World Foundation. It's a global nonprofit that supports youth around the world aged 18 to 25 who are doing projects that uplift humanity and make this a better world. I started this nonprofit, the nonprofit arm of Conscious Millionaire, and now it's growing. We've had applicants for our grants from over 10 countries. And if you'd like to learn about our Conscious World leadership grants, our leadership trainings, or to volunteer and get involved, go to consciousworld.org. And Tom, is there a cause or nonprofit you'd like to give a shout out to?
There is. First off, I just want to say I love that you model what you talk about. It's so inspiring. The group that I want to talk about is one that I've been involved with. A fellow coach of mine 10 years ago began an organization called The Greater Contribution. They do microloans in East Africa, and this year they made their 10,000th microloan, lifting people out of poverty. It's very meaningful.
And those microloans are made in Africa?
Yes, right.
I love the whole microloan area because you give $200, which gets paid back. You give training, and all of a sudden, and frequently it's women, it's just the way it works,
yes,
that all of a sudden their family, that gives the family an income because she learns how to make money. And then the children can go to school, and they're lifted out of one world into a completely different one.
Yes. And by the way, often the loans are $50. Oh. They're not even $200. So it's kind of jaw-dropping what a little bit of money does.
I know, because really, let's all be serious. That's the kind of money we spend on going to dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And yet that can change a whole family's life in a third world country. So I think that's a great cause. I want to thank you as well for showing up again for yourself. And thank you for being a listener, because you are the entire reason that I do the Conscious Millionaire podcast, is to bring great guests like Tom on so that you get the coaching, you get the insight, you get those golden nuggets. They're going to help you break through your 6 and 7 figure barriers, get your message out into the world, make your positive impact, and create the prosperity, the financial freedom, and the lifestyle that you want. I look forward to connecting with you on the next Conscious Millionaire podcast. And Tom, thank you so much for being our featured guest.
Thank you, JB.
This year, 2016, I'm committed to taking more businesses through their 6- and 7-figure barriers and helping you to create a fast growth business. So I want to give every listener a free copy of my book, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference. You know, it became the #1 book on all of Amazon with over 50,000 downloads. But instead of paying $27.95, I want to give you my book absolutely free. This book will teach you the exact steps that made me a millionaire so that you can use them in your business as well. How by doing less, you can actually get bigger results. And the total game changer that other millionaire trainers won't tell you. To get your free copy of my book, all we ask in turn is that you tell us a little bit about you and your business so that we can better serve your needs. Go to consciousmillionaire.com/free book. That's consciousmillionaire.com/free book to get your free copy now.